Hello there, welcome to my review of Columbo Season 13, Episode 5, Columbo Likes the Nightlife. First broadcast on the 30th of January 2003 on ABC. Written by Michael Alamo and directed by Jeffrey Reiner. Before I start my review, you may have noticed that this is the final episode of Columbo ever made. So this is my final review of the series. It's not my final Columbo video though. I plan to make many more videos on Columbo, although perhaps not quite as often. I do have a few more planned for the next few weeks though, and the next one will be a series roundup of this relaunched series, before I then look at both the original and the relaunched series together. And my last planned video will be a documentary about Columbo, but that is a long one, so it might take a little longer to produce. I would like to thank everyone who has subscribed to my channel and watches my videos for your support. You've made this long journey worthwhile, and I hope you'll stay with me for my new Columbo content and the next US TV series I'm going to be reviewing, which I will have a teaser for at the end of this review. So, without further ado, let's take a look at this finale. The episode begins with some loud techno music and some seizure-inducing scenes of people clubbing, before things begin to settle down, and we are introduced to Matthew Rhys's Justin Price and Carmine Giovinazzo's Tony Galper, discussing the financing of Price's club that is due to open, one with live fish in the dance floor.
Well, I didn't think we could have a nightclub called The Bait without any fish.
The techno music will be our score for the episode, and it's a little overbearing. The music itself is not as much of a problem as how loud it is compared to the dialogue in certain scenes. There was a trend of using dance music as score in this era of film and television, but it's really used well, and this is an example of it not being used well. Galper goes to see his ex-wife Vanessa, and he's clearly hung up on her.
Look at you. So beautiful.
So he's shocked to discover a photo of her embracing Price. He becomes violent, and she pushes him away, only for him to fall onto a glass coffee table.
Tony, get up.
Similar to Death Lends a Hand, but far more justifiable in this case. However, rather than call the police, she calls Price, because Galper was connected to the mob and she fears repercussions. Price is willing to go along with this until Galper's investment money is in his bank account, so they set about making it look as if Galper is still alive. All seems to have gone well until they receive messages from someone saying he knows what they did, and he has photos. It turns out that the blackmailer knows Price, and rather than accept his demands, Price convinces Vanessa their only way out is to kill the blackmailer. Price does so in a terrifyingly realistic scene, staging it to look like a suicide and removing all evidence of the blackmail. This opening setup is fantastic, despite the score being a little too much here and there. It looks beautiful, with interesting shot selection and complementary lighting. The murder is realistic, including how Price almost botches it, and the escalation of the accidental death, reason for the cover-up, and then murder are entirely believable. It doesn't feel at all like a Columbo episode, but with the exception of a few shots I could have done without, not in a bad way. Columbo arrives to investigate the apparent suicide, and he notices some fluorescent paint on the victim's car tyre, as well as the smell of mouthwash on his breath. He then checks the apartment for said mouthwash, and while I normally don't focus on continuity errors, there's a glaring one here as we switch from a wide shot of him checking out the bottle to insert shots of him looking at it and the other contents of the sink, and it's clearly two entirely different scenes with two entirely different shaped bottles. Columbo finds it odd that a man who is about to commit suicide gets himself smartened up to do so and manages to find out where the victim, tabloid reporter Linwood Coburn, was going the night before, the warehouse Price was holding his rave. It's empty, but luckily for Columbo there are a few ravers still dancing who didn't get the message the party was over. This is a bit of a stretch in credulity, as they don't give him any useful information, but it's harmless enough. Columbo traces the rave back to Price at his nightclub and shares the same opinion of the score that I do.
That's too loud! Ed, think! I can't interfere with a man thinking.
Price tells Columbo Coburn was a desperate man with gambling debts who had tried to kill himself previously. He also admits that he would feed Coburn tips on celebrities going to his raves so Coburn could take paparazzi photos of them for his tabloid career. This seems to placate Columbo, and after he leaves, Price calls Vanessa and tells her they should keep away from each other for a while until all this dies down.
Maybe it's best if we don't have too much contact, just for a little bit longer.
Columbo finds out that Coburn is as Price described, with 2 lawsuits currently against him and someone threatening him, but also that Price doesn't have an alibi for the time of Coburn's death. Price seems to handle Columbo's questions on the issue, but it looks like the detective is onto him. Columbo discovers an answer phone message from a man demanding money from Coburn and follows it up, only to discover it's Sean Jarvis, played by John Finnegan, who's been with the series nearly as long as Falk. Coburn wanted to use Jarvis's house to take pictures, but never paid him. Jarvis's house overlooks Vanessa's house. He also discovers Vanessa's ex-husband is missing, and Coburn took photos of Vanessa that are also missing. Plus Galper's mob connection, and that Coburn was looking into that connection. All of this connects Price, Vanessa, Galper, and Coburn. And Columbo quickly unravels the false trail Price laid to make it look as if Galper was still alive, pointing him right back at Price. With Price less than forthcoming, Columbo puts pressure on Vanessa to reveal what happened to Galper, as he did with Joan in Prescription Murder.
This doesn't prove anything.
No, it doesn't, but it helps. I'm going to run along. I know you're in a rush.
I want to call my lawyer.
Now, Dr. Fleming killed his wife, and you want to call your lawyer.
And it seems to work as she rushes to Price, with Columbo right behind, with a warrant for Price's club. Vanessa doesn't give Price up, though. Columbo already knows where Galper is buried, under Price's fish tank floor. This episode is far from perfect. The score is a little overbearing, particularly in scenes with Columbo on his own, where the techno score isn't as present, but the modern score is still not quite right. Some of the scenes in the nightclub are almost unwatchable with the use of the strobe effect in an effort to capture the nightclub aesthetic. And the murderer is not high status enough for a Columbo villain. Despite their best efforts to make Price unlikable, it doesn't quite go far enough. He's not rich or famous or a genius getting rid of someone for selfish gain, He's forced to act because of an accident his girlfriend has, and then makes a bad decision about someone who was essentially stalking her and blackmailing them both. Having said that, I still enjoyed it much more than I remember. The modern style doesn't really suit Falk's aging Columbo, but they don't try to make him fit into this world. He doesn't understand, and he's usually a fish out of water in the places he investigates. So a nightclub is no different to any of the other locations he's investigated in the past. I think if they'd made the contrast between the two worlds a little starker, perhaps with the use of traditional shots and music when Columbo's alone, and used the modern music and shot selection when he's in Price's world, or when Price is alone, it would have been more interesting, but I think it handles a clubbing setting a lot better than many other TV shows that have used it. All in all, I enjoyed it a lot more than I thought I would, and a lot more than I remember. Possibly because it looks as dated now, 20 years on, as any other episode from this relaunch series. For me, this is a 3 out of 5. So that ends my Columbo reviews. Started on the 50th anniversary of the series airing and ending 20 years after the series concluded. But I'm not done with 70s US TV about idiosyncratic detectives who drive iconic cars and were shown on NBC just yet, as the next show I'll be covering is The Rockford Files.
This is Jim Rockford. At the tone, leave your name and message. I'll get back to you.
Join me as I review every episode of the classic series starring James Garner as Jim Rockford and featuring guest stars and locations with Columbo connections everywhere. Coming soon. Thank you. Goodbye.